Let me start with a number. 1. In 10 career appearances against Arsenal, Erling Haaland has scored 1 goal. 1. Think about that for a second. The most clinical striker on the planet, the man who has 41 goals this season, 1 goal against us in 10 attempts. I have been sitting with that number all week, and honestly, the more I look at it, the more it tells me about Sunday. Now, I want you to hold that number in your mind, because everything I am about to break down today connects back to it. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that number is not a coincidence. It is a consequence, a direct tactical consequence of how Arsenal are built and how Arteta has deliberately set this team up to neutralise the biggest individual threat in English football. But, and this is important, that number tells you what Arsenal do well. It does not tell you what Arsenal are risking right now. And right now, 3 days before the Carabao Cup final at Wembley, there are 2 injury situations at this football club that could fundamentally change the structure of this team on the biggest stage of the season. Not just change the personnel, change the entire system, the whole way the team functions. I know a lot of you watching this are feeling that mix right now, excitement about Sunday, but that quiet anxiety in the back of your mind about the injury news. Honestly, I feel it too, and I think that tension is worth exploring properly because the answer is in the detail. So today we are going deeper than the headlines. We are going into what is actually happening tactically, what it means strategically, and what Sunday genuinely represents for this Arsenal project. No hype, no noise, just the analysis. So let us get into it. Right, first things first, let us establish where both of these clubs actually are heading into Sunday, because the context here is absolutely everything. Arsenal go into this final first in the Premier League with 70 points from 31 games, 9 points clear of Manchester City in second. They have already eliminated Bayer Leverkusen in the Champions League last 16, 3-1 on aggregate, and they face Sporting Lisbon in the quarter-finals. They are still alive in 4 competitions simultaneously. That is the extraordinary reality of where this football club is in March 2026. Manchester City, on the other hand, are out of Europe. Real Madrid eliminated them 5-1 on aggregate in the Champions League round of 16. 3 consecutive exits at the hands of Real Madrid in that competition. And in the Premier League, they dropped points at home to Nottingham Forest last week, drew at West Ham before that. Haaland has scored 4 goals in his last 17 appearances. 4 goals in 17 games. This is not the Manchester City of 2 or 3 years ago. The machine has genuinely slowed, and I think that reality has not fully landed in the wider conversation about this final yet. Now, and this is where it gets interesting, what does this final actually mean for each team? Because the answer is very different depending on which dressing room you are sitting in. For Arsenal, this is a statement, a validation, an opportunity to win the first piece of silverware of this season and maintain the momentum of what is shaping up to be the most significant campaign this club has seen in a generation. For City, though, this is something altogether different. With the Champions League gone and the Premier League looking increasingly out of reach, 9 points is a mountain with 10 games to go. This Carabao Cup final is their most realistic remaining major trophy opportunity of the entire season. That asymmetry matters. It matters psychologically, and it matters in terms of what each team is willing to risk on Sunday. Now, I want to be transparent about one thing before we go further. City do carry one genuine advantage into this final, and it would be dishonest not to acknowledge it. Rest. Arsenal played 90 minutes of Champions League football on Tuesday against Leverkusen. City have had no European football since their exit to Real Madrid weeks ago. Guardiola's squad is fresher, they have had more recovery time and more preparation time specifically for this fixture. That is a real variable. It is not the deciding factor on its own, but it is real, and I will come back to how Arteta has tried to manage that through his squad decisions this week. So here is the question I want to build this entire analysis around. Can Arsenal's system function without Martin Ødegaard? And have Arteta's decisions this week already given us the answer, before the game has even been played? Think about that carefully, because the situation around Ødegaard is not simply a personnel question, it is a system architecture question, and that distinction is the most important thing I'm going to say today. Ødegaard did not feature in Tuesday's win over Leverkusen. He has a knee issue. Arteta's words after that match were carefully managed. Ødegaard really wants to be available. They are pushing hard, but they need to see how he responds in training over the next few days. That is not a confident update. That is a manager protecting himself from making a promise he cannot keep. Alongside Ødegaard, Jurriën Timber also missed the Leverkusen match with an ankle problem. Arteta's language on Timber was similarly cautious, matter of days, but not sure. Again, not the kind of phrasing you use when you fully expect someone to be ready for a Wembley final in 72 hours. And Mikel Merino is already out for the season entirely. Foot surgery will not feature. So the most technically sophisticated players in Arsenal's creative and midfield hierarchy are either absent or uncertain. Now here is why that is so serious, and this is the part most coverage is not explaining properly. This detail matters more than people realise. Let me walk you through how Arsenal's system actually works. Not the surface level, the real mechanics underneath it. Arteta's 4-2-3-1 is built around a concept of vertical connectivity. What that means is the system functions through layers. The back four, the double pivot of Rice and Zubimendi, the attacking midfield layer, and the front line. For those layers to be connected effectively in tight spaces against a high-quality defensive block, which is exactly what City provide, you need specific players who can receive the ball under pressure, stay calm, turn, and play forward quickly. Ødegaard is that connector. He is the player who operates in the half space between City's midfield and their defensive line. He receives in areas where other players would panic, and he either plays through immediately or draws pressure and creates space for runners beyond him. Without him, the connection between Rice and Zubimendi at the base and the front line above them is broken. The team has to find different ways to progress, and those ways are slower, more predictable, and much easier for a well-organised City defensive structure to manage. So who fills that role? Most likely Kai Havertz if Ødegaard is absent. And I want to be clear, Havertz is a quality player, but his profile is different. He drops deeper, he links play physically, he is better running onto balls than receiving them stationary under pressure. That is a different function entirely. And when you put a different function in the same position, you do not simply swap one player for another. You change how the whole system behaves. The team becomes more horizontal in its passing. Build-up becomes slower. And against City, who will be well organised and structured, slower horizontal build-up is precisely what Guardiola wants to see. Now, are you following me on this? Because I want to add the second layer. Timber's absence is a separate problem that compounds the first one significantly. What Timber does as a right-back is not what most right-backs do. He is not primarily a defensive player in that role. He is a ball carrier. He drives forward. He creates overloads on Arsenal's right side alongside Saka, and he gives Arsenal a progressive second option in the right channel. His relationship with Saka on that flank has been one of the most productive combinations in the Premier League this season. Ben White replaces him, and White is technically clean, comfortable in possession, reliable, but he is a more conservative option. He holds the ball slightly longer, he chooses the safer pass more often, and he provides less forward thrust from that right-back position. City will have identified this immediately. Expect Guardiola to position a player likely Bernardo Silva or Foden to deliberately trigger White in the early exchanges. Force him to receive under pressure from the first few minutes, test his composure under that kind of intensity, and use his more cautious decision-making to slow Arsenal's right side down. And when that happens, when White holds the ball a touch longer under pressure, Saka tracks back more to help. When Saka tracks back more, Arsenal's most dangerous forward player spends energy defensively instead of offensively. That is a structural cost, and it flows directly from one positional change. That is the chain. Timber absent, White conservative, Saka defensive, Arsenal's right side restricted. One injury, multiple consequences. This is where the tactical reality of these doubts becomes genuinely serious. Right, now this is where it gets genuinely interesting. And I want you to stay with me here because this is the part most previews are completely missing. While Arsenal have real structural concerns, City arrive at Wembley with a significant tactical vulnerability of their own. And it sits in almost exactly the same area of the pitch. Josko Gvardiol is out, broken leg, sustained in January, not expected back for at least another month. Now, most coverage mentions this as a defensive loss, but that is not the full picture, and here is the part most viewers have missed entirely. Gvardiol under Guardiola is not a traditional left-back. He is an inverted ball carrier. He drives inside from the left, provides City's primary width and progression on that side, and is one of the main engines of their build-up. Without him, City's patterns from the left become predictable. The ball goes right more often. The variety disappears. Now ask yourself, what is Arsenal's press designed to do? It cuts off central lanes. Rice and Zubimendi block the central escape routes. The wide forwards press the fullbacks. City need multiple build-up options to escape that structure. Without Gvardiol, the left side of City's build-up cannot provide that variety. The player filling that position will be under pressure from the very first minute, and they will not have Gvardiol's physical and technical ability to drive through that pressure. This is Arsenal's clearest tactical entry point on Sunday. It is sitting right there, and Arteta's coaching staff will have mapped it in forensic detail. And then there is Eze. Let me tell you about Eberechi. Eze, because I think he is the most dangerous and least discussed attacking variable in this entire final. And I say that as someone who spent most of this week assuming Saka would be the key attacking player to watch. He scored a wonderful goal against Leverkusen on Tuesday, 4 goals in 7 appearances since joining permanently. What makes him uniquely dangerous for City, specifically, is his movement profile. He drives inward from the left into the half space at pace, drawing defenders toward him, creating space for runners beyond City's right side. Without a natural progressive presence to replace Gvardiol, will face Eze arriving in exactly the areas they are most exposed. Here is the beautiful tactical overlap, and this is the insight I want you to take away from this section. The area where Arsenal are most dangerous in attack. Eze cutting inside from the left is the exact same area where City are most defensively vulnerable because of Gvardiol's absence. The team that controls that left-to-right diagonal corridor on Sunday controls the match. Write that down. Now, I want to address something that will be treated as a minor decision in Sunday's build-up, but which I think is one of the most revealing moments of Arteta's management philosophy this season. The goalkeeper, who starts, Kepa Arrizabalaga or David Raya. Kepa has been Arsenal's designated cup goalkeeper all season. Every round, he has his rhythm within this specific competition. Convention says he starts on Sunday. David Raya starts every Premier League and Champions League match. He is clearly Arsenal's number 1 in terms of system integration. Most discussion frames this as cup tradition versus league preference. It is not at the tactical level. And honestly, when I started thinking through the full implications of this decision, it surprised me how far the consequences actually reach. This is a question about how Arsenal escape Guardiola's press. Raya functions as a sweeper keeper in this system. He positions aggressively, reads pressure early, distributes with pace and accuracy, and acts essentially as an additional outfield player in Arsenal's build-up phase. That is not a luxury detail. It is structural. It is genuinely part of how Arsenal progress the ball out from the back when they are being pressed. Kepa is a competent goalkeeper, a good goalkeeper, but he does not replicate that function to the same level. If Arteta plays Kepa out of convention, City's press becomes more effective in the opening 15 minutes because the build-up escape route through the goalkeeper is less clean. And if the build-up is compromised early, Rice has to work harder to escape pressure, White has to manage more direct attention, and the structural weight on an already altered system becomes heavier from the first whistle. One goalkeeper decision. Consequences across the pitch in multiple positions simultaneously. This detail matters far more than the back pages will suggest. And here is why it matters beyond Sunday. It tells us something important about how Arteta operates in the biggest moments. Does he honour the cup rhythm and the player who earned his place by performing in every round? Or does he make the pragmatic system first call and start the goalkeeper who makes the entire structure function more cleanly? That decision, printed on the team sheet at 3:30 on Sunday afternoon, will tell you a great deal about where Arteta's head is before the match even begins. All right, let me tell you directly what I think, because analysis without a conclusion is just observation, and professional analysis requires a professional opinion. The psychological balance of this final favours Arsenal more than any individual tactical factor. I said it at the beginning. Haaland has 1 goal in 10 appearances against Arsenal. That is not luck. That is not coincidence. That is the direct result of Saliba and Gabriel defending a narrow high line that denies Haaland his primary weapon, the run in behind. Haaland does not manufacture chances from nothing. He finishes chances at an extraordinary rate. But first, someone has to create those chances for him. And Arsenal's defensive structure is uniquely calibrated to prevent the service he needs. His real threat on Sunday is different from what most people imagine. It is not him running in behind, it is him holding up play and using his physical presence in the box to knock the ball down for runners arriving late. If City's wide players Bernardo, Foden can get into one-on-one situations against Gabriel or Saliba and deliver crosses into that area, then Haaland's presence becomes dangerous. Arsenal must not allow those wide isolations. That is the defensive instruction above all others on Sunday. But step back from Haaland for a moment. Look at City's broader situation. They are coming into this final, having just been beaten 5-1 on aggregate by Real Madrid. Their players have experienced a significant and very public psychological defeat. Guardiola himself acknowledged after that match, and these were his exact words, that City are not a complete team right now. That is a manager being honest with the media about where his squad actually is. And 9 points behind in the Premier League with 10 games remaining, this cup final is their last realistic chance at something major this season. That is a different kind of pressure to what Arsenal are carrying. And I want every Arsenal supporter watching this to understand that going into Sunday, 6 consecutive Premier League meetings without defeat, 5-1 at the Emirates earlier this season, Arsenal's biggest ever Premier League win over City. City's players know that record, they have lived it. And that knowledge is not neutral information sitting harmlessly in the back of your mind. It is there when you walk out at Wembley in front of 90,000 people, and the occasion is at its most intense. The one thing I will not dismiss, and I want to be completely honest here, is Guardiola's preparation for specific finals. No manager in world football approaches a single game the way Guardiola does, when the stakes are clear and the time to prepare is available. His record in this exact competition is unmatched. He will arrive at Wembley on Sunday with a plan that is detailed, specific, and built around Arsenal's current vulnerabilities. And right now, those vulnerabilities are more visible than at any point this season because of the injury doubts. So my professional assessment is this. Arsenal win this final if their system holds, if Ødegaard features even from the bench in the second half, the creative architecture remains functional. If Timber starts at right back, the structural balance on that right side is restored. In that scenario, Arsenal's system quality, their psychological confidence, and their tactical entry point through City's exposed left side should be enough to win the match. If both Ødegaard and Timber are absent, the calculation becomes more complicated. Not unwinnable, absolutely not, but structurally more vulnerable. And Guardiola will identify and target those vulnerabilities systematically from the first minute. Now, let us talk about what Sunday means beyond the 90 minutes. Because this is bigger than a cup. Arsenal are alive in 4 competitions. The Premier League, the Champions League, the FA Cup, and the Carabao Cup final on Sunday. Winning on Sunday does not guarantee anything else. But it means the quadruple remains a genuine live possibility going into April. And that changes the atmosphere around this club, how the squad feels, how every opponent approaches fixtures against them, how the story of this season is written. But there is a deeper point here. Arteta has been Arsenal manager since December 2019. He has won 1 trophy, the FA Cup in August 2020. Everything since has been described fairly as the project in progress. The table is beautifully set, first in the league, Champions League quarter-finals, arguably the most talented Arsenal squad in 20 years. At some point, though, the project must deliver. At some point, you must win something significant to prove that what has been built is real. Sunday is the first major opportunity of this season to do exactly that. And I know that feeling is shared by every single person watching this right now. We have waited. We have believed. Sunday is when belief has to become something tangible. Winning it against the team that sits second in the Premier League, managed by the greatest tactician of this era, in a final at Wembley, that is not just winning a trophy. That is validation at the highest possible level. I will also be honest about the inverse, because I think genuine analysis requires it. If Arsenal lose this final, the table does not change. They are still 9 points clear. Mathematically, nothing significant shifts. But the first question mark appears in the narrative of the season. Can this Arsenal side win when the occasion is at its absolute maximum? And that question does not go away quietly. It follows them into the Champions League quarter-final, into the FA Cup, and into the final stretch of the Premier League title race. I am not suggesting a loss derails the season. I am saying it changes the psychological temperature of everything that follows. And that is the honest analytical reality, even if it is not the comfortable one. So what am I watching for specifically when the team sheet arrives on Sunday afternoon? Three things that will tell me more about this match than anything said in any press conference. First, is Ødegaard named in the starting 11, on the bench, or absent entirely? That single piece of information reveals more about Arsenal's tactical approach than anything else. If he starts, Arteta has decided the system runs as designed. If he is named on the bench, Arsenal will play conservatively in the first half and look to introduce him at a moment when City are stretched and fatigued. If he is absent completely, Arteta has had to rebuild the tactical plan around different connectors. And this becomes a match defined more by defensive structure and set pieces than by flowing system football. Second, who starts in goal? I have explained the significance. Watch it carefully. Third, how Arsenal's press operates in the opening 10 minutes. This is where things will be decided early. If they press City's left side aggressively from the first whistle, Arteta has identified the Gvardiol absence as the primary entry point and wants to impose pressure before City can settle into their shape. If Arsenal sit in their structure initially and invite City to come forward, Arteta wants to absorb first and counter later. Those three observations, visible before a single pass has been played, will tell you the story of how the next 90 minutes are going to unfold. And then there is the longer view, because there is a fixture waiting after Sunday that I think deserves to be mentioned now. April 19th, Manchester City versus Arsenal, Premier League, or Etihad. If Arsenal win on Sunday, they go to the Etihad in 4 weeks, having beaten City at Wembley for a major trophy, 9 points ahead in the league. The psychological weight of that situation on City's players and coaching staff will be significant and will not be hidden. If City wins Sunday, that April fixture becomes a different match entirely. City with a trophy, momentum restored, and a specific point to prove against the team that has dominated them for 18 months. Arsenal with a 9-point lead, but a recent final loss sitting in the recent memory of both squads. Either way, April 19th at the Etihad is the most important single league fixture of Arsenal's season. Sunday at Wembley sets the psychological context for it. That is the longer game being played here, beyond the trophy, beyond the occasion, beyond Sunday itself, and it is something I will be coming back to in detail on this channel, whatever happens at Wembley. So let me leave you with this. Every final, in every sport, in every era, comes down to one question. Which team can impose their identity when the occasion is at its most intense and the pressure is at its absolute maximum? Right now, Arsenal's identity is the clearest it has been in a generation. Tactical, organised, mentally resilient, built around a system that has made the best teams in Europe look predictable. And City's identity is the most uncertain it has been in a decade. A manager whose future is being discussed publicly, a striker in a sustained drought specifically against this opposition, a squad without European football to sharpen their edge, and a structural hole on the left side of their defence that has not been adequately filled. That is not opinion built on loyalty to this football club. That is what the evidence shows consistently across the last 3 months of this season. On Sunday at 4:30 at Wembley, one of those identities asserts itself over the other. My professional assessment is that it will be Arsenal's. But I genuinely want to know what you think, because these are the conversations I look forward to most with this community. One specific question for the comments. Do you trust this Arsenal system enough to win Sunday without Ødegaard if he does not make it? Because in my view, that is the only genuine question Sunday actually answers about how far this project has truly come. Drop your answer below. I read everyone. This is James Arsenal Analysis. I am James. See you Sunday.